Caris Cunningham. Earth is the greatest thing known to us. Sure, there's an infinite amount of stars and planets hovering all throughout space, each having their own remarkable characteristics. But Earth is our home. Earth's composed of millions of different processes, environments, species, lands, elements that all come together and create a perfect planet that allows beautiful life to live. Earth gives us rain, water, air, species, and so much more. So then why don't we give back to it? People tend to think the issues of plastic and food waste, pollutions are problems too big for them. But there's many simple little tasks that if they became a social norm in modern day society would really make a difference in stopping waste. So, one simple way to limit waste in America is composting, the recycling of organic materials. So let's choose a nice spot in our backyard for our compost pile and see what composting is. Then let's start obtaining organic materials and see how composting will lead you to a healthier, greener lifestyle. Then let's turn our pile to aerate and see how one could actually compost. So first, let's choose a nice spot in our backyard and see what composting is. Composting, in short, is a way of at-home recycling organic waste. This process involves the decomposition of organic materials into a thick hummus-like texture called compost. Wright Park's Mowing Foundation found that about 650 pounds of compostable materials are thrown away each year. There's so many materials that could be composted, but the most basic is food waste. For consideration, in the morning after you're making breakfast, eggs specifically, what do you do with the eggshells after cracking the eggs? After you've brewed tea, what do you do with the leftover tea bags? After peeling potato, orange, banana, pineapple, what are you doing with those nutrient-rich organic materials that can be broken down easily in your backyard and given back to your environment? Throwing away. When you throw something away, it doesn't just disappear. It goes to landfills, trash dumps, until it piles up until we have to bury it. Landfills are terrible for the environment. They can be tied to issues of the excessive decomposition releases gases like methane and ammonia, which can be tied to issues such as climate change, ground level ozone, and the displacement of oxygen. Not to mention, high levels of methane are flammable and could be the reasons that drier places such as California and Australia are having easily lit and devastating wildfires. The effects of landfills are harmful to Earth. That's simple knowledge. But have you ever actually tried to do anything about limiting your waste? EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, estimates that in 2018, 2.6 million tons of organic materials were composted. However, that only makes up about 4%. So imagine the other 96% that makes up billions of tons that end up in landfills. So now that we know what composting is, let's start collecting organic materials and lay our first few layers and see how composting can lead you to a healthier, greener lifestyle. There's many reasons why one would compost besides limiting food waste, and most people compost for the actual compost result. Like stated before, composting is the recycling of organic waste. So how is this otherwise junk actually being recycled? Like stated, most people compost for the actual compost result. So what do they do with this compost? Compost is great additions to gardens, lawns, houseplants, and everything in between. Putting compost in your soil has many, many benefits that ultimately replenishes and stabilizes your soil. For example, compost can be used as a natural buffer, neutralizing both acidic and alkaline soils. Your plants can't handle a soil pH that leans too much on one side. So putting compost allows the pH to be more neutral rather than too acidic or basic. Composting also helps moisture retain your soil, meaning you don't have to water it as often, and soil is able to stay in the topmost layers, so your plants don't have to go deeper down into hard soil in search for water. Also meaning you don't have to water as much, and saving you and your soil some time and effort. Compost can also be used as a mulch, and small organisms such as worms are really drawn to soil with compost, and worms help aerate your soil because, believe it or not, your plant's roots actually respirate, breathing in oxygen just like us. So with the help of these worms, air is able to retain in your soil. So now that we know how composting can help you lead a greener lifestyle, let's start to aerate and toss our soil and see how one could actually compost. So there's thousands of organic materials that are being thrown away each year, and these waste are categorized into two groups: your green waste and your brown waste. Your green waste are your nitrogen-rich waste that can be scraps such as fruit and vegetable scraps, live leaves, flowers, and so many more. Nitrogen is a vital necessity to your soil because nitrogen allows your soil cells to be able to reduce and make food as it needs. Your brown waste is your carbon-rich scraps such as newspapers, paper, wood chips, sawdust, coffee grounds, coffee filters, tea bags, so much more. Carbon helps keep microorganisms in your soil, which help drastically speed up the decomposition process and help easily break down your compost. To compost, it's really simple. You just need to set a pile, maybe a bin, in your backyard and saw, cut, or tear organic scraps, green or food waste, into as small as pieces as possible so that it's easy to break down, and put it in your pile. And as you keep a 2-to-1 ratio with carbon and nitrogen, keeping twice as much carbon waste than green waste, and aerate your pile by turning it, tossing like one does a salad, and watering your compost to keep a slight wetness so it's easy to break down. Your compost will eventually heat up, speeding up the decomposition process drastically. So composting is a very simple way to limit your food waste, and so give composting a try. It might just change your life.